Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here as always with Tom. How's it going?
Tony, first of all, that pause was wildly insufficient. We have had listeners request that you would lengthen the pause. That was barely a pause at all. I almost want to make you go back and start the show again, but I guess we'll soldier on. So Tony, I'm great. We were just talking before we started recording about the fact that we have now reached the point of the off season where it's just like, oh, we're running out of days before we have to travel to Minnesota, and we're running out of podcasts. We've had this wonderful, bountiful off season of podcasts where we could talk about anything we want to, and it's like, we're running out of shows. We better start talking about the season and talking about getting into game week podcast pretty soon.
I know it's so annoying that we have to talk about the games that are here. But before we do that, Tom, we thought, you know what, let's do this show this way. We're gonna take a look at Ohio State's schedule, and we've individually ranked the schedule from easiest to most difficult. I have not seen Tom's list. He has not seen my list. You have not seen either of our lists, I assure you. And so now we'll just go back and forth and discuss where we think this thing ends up. Because I'll be honest, I don't feel great about my rankings, and it's not my fault. It's the Big Ten's fault. It's the schedule's fault. And so how did you find this process, Tom? How did you find it to be?
It felt like more than ranking in a specific like linear order. It felt more like we should just do this in tiers, because there's like about 4 tiers of this schedule. There's the games that Ohio State could plausibly lose, and we'll say 25-30% chance of a loss. There's the games where it's like, well, this team is competent, and if Ohio State forgets to get on the airplane or something, they could theoretically, you got a 10% chance of losing. And then you've got this like bland gruel at the bottom of the Big Ten that's just like, well, this is going to be boring and not particularly entertaining, and Ohio State's going to win, and this team is bad, but I mean, it's a league game. And then there's Akron at the bottom. I don't want to spoil anything, but they might be. I mean, Akron is, I don't want to cast aspersions on anyone, but Akron is UMass bad, like UConn bad, like that. Akron is that in that level of the sport. It is going to be an enormous waste of time. It is like playing a particularly talented high level Ohio high school team, probably. So yeah, Ohio State minus whatever in that one. So I look at that. We've already started. Akron is the worst team on this schedule. Tony, I bet you agree with me.
Let me do my list as well. Yes, Akron is the worst team on the schedule. That'll be the easiest game. Week 4 is an interesting time for that. This would normally be like your opener or something like that. So, it will give, I think, everybody an opportunity to see the young guys. Maybe by that point, Quinn Ewers actually gets a snap or two. So it'll be fun to see that. So where the list really begins, it's like the draft. Like once the top 3 guys where everybody knows where they're going are gone, now the draft begins. So this is where the list really begins, Tom.
Akron is the Trevor Lawrence of college football. Heard it here first.
I don't know if that would be the case. But Akron will be losing to Ohio State this year. So there is some point there. My number 2 easiest game on the schedule, Michigan State. It's at home for Ohio State. It's Michigan State is bad. Yes, they beat Michigan last year. That doesn't mean they're not bad this year as well. So that's where I have them. And really, I could have put some other teams there. I didn't want to put Tulsa there because I feel like Tulsa will contend for a conference. And if you can contend for a conference, then you should be higher than 2 on this list. So they've met some requirements for me. Now, none of these other teams like a Michigan State or Purdue or Maryland or Rutgers, like those guys don't meet any requirements. But for me, it's Michigan State. And I feel like I'm okay with that.
This is going to be maybe the most disappointing podcast we've ever done, because I was like, I'm going to have Michigan State number 2, and Tony's going to be like, mind blown. How could you have Michigan State number 2 on this list? And okay, well, Tony and I have apparently talked about football a bunch, and our opinions have coalesced around certain factors. I promise you, dear listener, we have not planned this out. If our lists are exactly the same, I'm going to be every bit as annoyed as you are. But yes, Michigan State is Mark D'Antonio did not leave that program in a great place. Mark D'Antonio also left that program at a weird time where he resigned in March last year. So Mel Tucker did not have a full season last year. He kind of came in and, that he had what he had. He probably couldn't make a lot of changes. This is maybe more of a year one for Mel Tucker now that he's, actually has a spring ball to be able to get his guys in and actually has a recruiting class in. It was not a particularly great recruiting class. There's not a ton of talent on this team. This is a team that Ohio State should beat by 50 points. I mean, they beat them by 50 points with a patchwork offensive line last year, and that was in East Lansing. So yes, this is a team that this is not your 2013, 2015 era Michigan State team. This is they have a long way to go. And the only interesting game for Michigan State this year to me is the Michigan game, because that one's in East Lansing. They could plausibly beat Michigan, and if they beat Michigan for another year, like that will be that right there will be the end of Jim Harbaugh. Like, just don't bother getting on the bus back home. Just you live here now. Like, sorry, just you're not invited to go back home anymore.
I should look where will we be during that game, because I would like to watch that live. That is October 30th. Oh, Ohio State will be hosting Penn State that weekend.
We may be a little occupied, a little busy.
Maybe that Michigan State game will be a night game, because we know Ohio State Penn State will be big noon.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, we'll eventually get to see that Michigan State game, and it should be a rousing, good time. Tom, number 3 on my list. And this is where we get back to, it's Tulsa. But if you put Tulsa and, say, Purdue on the same field, neutral site, or if you even put them in Tulsa, I'm probably taking Tulsa maybe. And but they're also, there's Rutgers in there. But at some point, I've got to throw the non-conference game in there. And so it's Tulsa, because I have seen Purdue beat Ohio State before. I've seen Rutgers beat Big Ten teams, and they were 3-1 on the road last year. So I like Maryland's talent more than Tulsa's talent. So that's why I'm going with Tulsa here, even though they may be a better collective unit on any given Saturday than those other teams. But I respect what Tulsa has been able to do, almost winning the division or winning the conference last year. And, they contended, but it's still Tulsa. And so you are number 3 on this list. Tom, what about you?
My number 3 is Purdue. And I think maybe we have the Tulsa conversation here, because we're not getting to Tulsa for a couple spots for me. So here's my thoughts on Tulsa. First of all, Phil Steele. When in doubt, check your Phil Steele. If you don't have a strong opinion on a team, check your Phil Steele. He has them tied with SMU, Houston, and Memphis in the AAC, tied for 3rd. If you had SMU, Houston, or Memphis on this schedule, you would not have, and none of those teams would be ahead of Purdue. None of those teams would be ahead of Maryland, or, ranked as easier than Maryland. This is, if you have Tulsa here, that is because of because of the helmets, because of the jerseys. It's not because of the talent necessarily. 10 starters back on offense, 8 on defense. If it's Tulsa and Purdue in a neutral site, and they're playing in that dome in St. Louis, like, I got to tell you, like, I'll give you Purdue +3 in that one. You want to take that action on a neutral site? I suspect that you do not, because this is a Purdue team that I have no real faith in. The Jeff Brom thing has just not really worked out, and I don't see it. And Purdue to me is a team that at Purdue and versus Purdue on the schedule are 2 very different things. They are like the poor man's Iowa in that category, where it's like, at Purdue, for whatever reason, West Lafayette is just a weird pain in the butt place for teams, and especially Ohio State, to play, just like Iowa is. Home for Iowa and at Iowa are 2 very different rankings on the list like this. So, home for Purdue, You don't have the weird West Lafayette thing. You just have a not particularly talented team coming to your place, and Ohio State's going to be favored by 35 points. And I don't think you get to Tulsa for a couple spots here, but that's okay. We finally disagree. That's good.
Yeah, no, that's good. Defensively, I think Ohio State will be able to do. Tulsa's defense won't put up much of a fight, and I base that on the fact that they're from Oklahoma. So maybe that's a subconscious, like, teams from the state of Oklahoma are. You have something to say, Tom?
I mean, that hasn't typically worked out. It hasn't recently worked out in other sports for Ohio State, playing teams from Oklahoma who are big underdogs. So
we're not here to talk about the past, Tom. But, like last year, almost beating Cincinnati, as a 14-point underdog and nearly doing that. And I'm fine with where you have them. My number 4 is Purdue. And I went back and forth on Purdue and Tulsa. And then it just gets like, you kind of go back and forth on all of these different teams. And sometimes you bypass one because you wouldn't, you have to rank them. And so with Purdue, I went with, I think the Big Ten helps them in terms of my bias, you're Big Ten, you must be better. But I do like what they can do with the offense. Defensively, they have, they've got a Karlaftis. Actually, they may have 2 now, I believe. So that helps. But these are all games that Ohio State wins by 3 touchdowns. So that's why they kind of get jumbled up here. So I'm going Purdue with my fourth easiest. Aha, look at that English usage by me. And I know they just named Jack Plummer as their starting quarterback. So that, does that mean anything? No, because they're going to start 2 or 3 different quarterbacks this year because everybody gets hurt or benched. But I've got Purdue at 4, Tom. What about you?
Well, I had Purdue 3. To me, Maryland is 4, because Maryland is, you make a good point. I mean, the talent level at Maryland, like they're starting to build some pieces. That is, recruiting has never been Mike Locksley's issue. It's getting those guys, getting those 5-star players to then play like 5-star players on Saturdays. They have some pieces. I mean, like Raheem Jarrett, wide receiver, for example. Wide receiver, they was committed to LSU or was about to go to LSU or something and then stole him away. Like that is a very good piece. And you're starting to stack some of those. Talia Tagovailoa, transfer for Alabama. Like this is a good piece for you to start building your program around. But it's not, it's individual pieces. It's not the whole thing yet. And I just don't have a ton of faith in Mike Locksley as a coach and as a program builder. As it's like the piece, you can get the pieces, but can you then assemble the pieces? Or is this just like a bunch of Legos sitting on the floor and you step on them and they hurt? Like that's about where the danger comes. You also, you go back 2 years, and the onside kick against Maryland and Ohio State, maybe just a little bit too gleefully hanging 70 points on Maryland a couple of years ago. I don't know that Ryan Day necessarily lets off the gas as quite as early as he might have. I think Ryan Day might be a little more spiteful than he lets on, and you can ascribe whatever possible motivation that he would have to being a little more spiteful to Mike Locksley that you would like. And this just doesn't seem like a particularly threatening game to me. And, again, like on the road at Maryland, yeah, sure. I mean, we can talk about it, but there has been functionally one competitive game with Maryland during their time in the Big Ten. Every other game has just been like, okay, here's our blender. Hop in. We're going to hit liquefy for 3 hours. And then it's 62-3 at the end of it. And that's been like every Maryland game, except for the one that made Ohio State fans want to pull their hair out in 2018. So yeah, I've got Maryland 4 just because that seems like one where they may have a little extra focus just because, and you're more likely to overlook Tulsa than you are Maryland, I think. So
don't you think Ryan Day has forgiven? Like he punished them in 2019 for what they did.
Mm-hmm. Well, last year they cost Ohio State a game by getting COVID. So
well, yeah, okay.
Revenge Tour 2, Electric Boogaloo. Here it comes.
Now we're kind of punishing the victim here, like Maryland, how dare you? You had COVID. Prepare to die, and they're just going to beat them to a pulp.
That's why Ohio State's lucky to duck Illinois this year. I've been saying this for months.
Yes, you have been saying that for months, and I've been asking you to stop. Enough with the Illinois stuff. My number 5, and like my 4, these two, I can tell you why I went this way, but my number 5 is at Rutgers, and I'm a road guy. Like I think road games are more difficult. I'll give you more credit. Obviously, road games are more difficult, but like when I look at the schedule, I look at the road games first, and you should win. If you're a good team, you should win all of your home games. If you're a great team, you should definitely win all of your home games. If you're a middling team, you should be able to get somebody at home. Like you should be able to rise up and get somebody. Rutgers isn't there talent-wise for me yet, and that's why I have them at 5. And since I haven't mentioned Maryland yet, you can kind of get an idea of where they would be on my list. I don't think the talent is there. I think the coaching is better than what Maryland will give you. I just don't know that they have the punching ability or just the overall talent and the quarterback issues that Rutgers has had. Granted, they'll have the same starter as last year, and he can do some things. But I went Rutgers here. I don't feel good about it. And like I said, I had to go back and forth. I just sided eventually with a talent that isn't there yet. So I went Rutgers at number 5.
Well, this is where I have Tulsa, and we've kind of had the Tulsa conversation, but I have Rutgers 6th. So I go Akron, Michigan State, Purdue, Maryland, Tulsa, and then at Rutgers. So, okay, let's have the Rutgers conversation right now. To me, the road game there is a significant thing. I mean, that you have to go on the road. It's always kind of a weird environment, whether it's in Maryland or Rutgers. If this was home for Rutgers at Maryland, I would probably flip those two. It's a weird environment. It's a very easy place to not be super excited to play because there's, the crowd is half full, and it's, it doesn't, you're getting on that plane knowing you're going to win. So it's like, okay, it's very easy to not be 100% locked in and focused. So, I think there's a better chance that at some point in the third quarter against Rutgers, it's a 2-score game. Ohio State's up 31-17 or something in the third quarter against Rutgers, as opposed to Maryland. Like, I think Maryland is going to be like, that game's over in the second quarter. Rutgers is like plausibly in the third quarter, a little bit more of a game. So that's why I have them there. And you saw it last year against Rutgers. It was 35-3 or something at half. And then all of a sudden the game ended, and it was like they still had their starters in. They didn't play the backups against Rutgers very much because Rutgers was enough of a pain in the butt to kind of hang around. And I think they'll do it again. The talent, the talent's not fantastic, but the talent is significantly better than it was under Chris Ash. So I think they are better enough that I think that's a little bit more challenging, especially on the road. And also, Tony, you forgot about the cannon. That's worth like 5-6 points right there.
The cannon, when you're not expecting the cannon and you're down on the sideline and it goes off for a field goal or whatever, or a first down, it can be jarring. Now, what I will say about Rutgers is they're no longer a secret to Ohio State, so they can't. I don't think Ryan Day will be caught napping after all of the stops that Rutgers had to pull out last year. And so maybe this is one of those Maryland things where you just keep the foot on the gas and you make it easier. But again, we know Rutgers is just going to keep chopping, Tom. They're just going to keep chopping that wood. And so they don't necessarily give up like you can see Maryland do.
Do you know who won the Maryland-Rutgers game? Because allow me to assure you, I did not know the answer to this. The Maryland-Rutgers game last year, it was at Maryland. Do you know who won?
Yes, I do, because I'm looking at it right now. Tell the listeners.
Rutgers 27, Maryland 24 in overtime. I mean, you can ascribe you can ascribe that to whatever you want to, whether it's coaching or talent or just, level of interest in the program or whatever. But that was Greg Schiano's year 1, and that was Mike Loxley's year 2. I mean, that was year 2 for Loxley. I am not real bullish on Maryland's long-term chances to stay ahead of Rutgers. I think this may be the year where that Maryland Rutgers game is one of them is going to get to 6 wins and a bowl game, and it's going to be whoever wins that game. This might be the year where Rutgers passes Maryland and stays ahead of Maryland then. Yeah, and like I said when I was talking about Rutgers, Maryland, they've got the offensive talent with the receivers, and assuming Taliatonga Vailoa can stay healthy, he's decent. I like Nick Cross in the secondary at safety for Maryland. They've got some guys that Ohio State went after and didn't get. So that's why I went Maryland there. And I didn't like it because it's a home game for Ohio State versus a road game for Rutgers. But let's move to the number 7 most difficult game on the list. And here, Tom, is where I think the schedule starts to get a little bit more. You can't just get up out of bed and go play football. And that's why I have at Nebraska, number 7. And I think we might start to be a little bit more similar, although we won't be. Something will happen here. But at Nebraska, road game, great crowd, a defense that is getting better. We'll see if I don't know that it's good yet. Turning quarterback and Adrian Martinez. I don't know what kind of running game they have. I don't. The transfer that they got from USC is, it is, or from wherever. They've had issues running the ball with the running backs. Can they keep Adrian Martinez healthy? Can he not turn the ball over? They've got some transfer receivers. They've got some guys that have been around for a while, and there's just something about being at Nebraska. And I know Ohio State has been okay there in the recent past, but it's you walk in there and it's different. It's special, and there's ghosts there. So got to be a little wary of the ghosts. That's a place that Ohio State, I mean, they've only lost to Nebraska once since they joined the Big Ten, and that was the game. You remember the game, 2011. Everything's going great, and then Braxton Miller sprains his ankle, and then Joe Bauserman happens. That's a place where Ohio State I think that atmosphere helps Ohio State focus. Like it seems like you go out there, it's always a sellout. It's never, 30% capacity like it can be in College Park or Piscataway. Like it is 100% capacity. Get the big crowd. They do a great job with the game day atmosphere. You can get the tunnel walk. It's an awesome time. That just for some reason, Ohio State is focused. Ohio State is always focused there, and they just beat the brakes off of Nebraska every time they play there. So Nebraska is next on the list for me. And you're right. Like this is where, they're kind of, as I said, there's kind of tiers here. This is like the bottom of the second tier to me, where it's like between, there's no way they lose to Rutgers. There really is functionally no way they're losing at Nebraska this year either. So maybe the next tier, this might be the top of the third tier instead of the bottom of the second tier, but it's, they're not losing to Nebraska, but this is where it's like, I'm like officially intrigued by these games now. Like this is, and part of that is Nebraska is my favorite road trip in the Big Ten, as I have said on many occasions. Like I love going to Nebraska. I love that stadium. I love the fan base. It is awesome. I love Lincoln. It is just everything about that place. I love it. So yeah, that may be biasing me a little bit, but this is a game where at some point this is going to be a significantly difficult game for Ohio State. It's not this year. It may be in a few more years when they're back there again, but not right now. So yeah, this is 7th on my list as well. So yep. 8th, Tom. Now things are going to start to get interesting because I'm wondering where a certain team pops up for you. You have something you would like to say? Well, you were making a face that made me think that the certain team was going to pop up here for you. I'm going to put my number 8 most difficult game on the Ohio State schedule is at the University, the U of M, the University of Minnesota. I saw you waiting, John. The anticipation. Now I've got Minnesota here as my number 8 most difficult game, and it's difficult for a lot of reasons. And it's the season opener, brand new Ohio State football team, brand new quarterback, going on the road. There are still a few tickets available based on what I talked to from the University of Minnesota yesterday when I had to buy our parking pass like poor, like a random citizen fan. But we're media time. We should be given these things.
So help me, if we get there and we have to pay for our food at the game, if we have to pay for our media meal, I will not be happy. That is the case in some places. But anyway,
I can't wait till you just start going into random restaurants in Minnesota, eating, and then just walking out like, it's okay. We're media, everyone. It's fine.
And I did it at the playoffs a couple of years ago because we went to the wrong buffet. It was a buffet in the resort. It was a breakfast buffet, and so we're eating, and they tried to give us a bill. I'm like, whoa. I was there with a couple of other guys on the beat, and they're like, we were told this is this was for media. We're media because we got our pins, and it was like a $50 buffet, and we're like, and I was the only one that had a wallet, so it was going to be an expensive breakfast. But they did talk to the manager, and the manager let us go. So that was good. Back to Minnesota, a veteran team, tons of starters returning, big offensive line. Talked to one of the Minnesota beat writers recently on one of Mark Rogers' shows, and just said they're looking at lineups with 6 or 7 offensive linemen out there at times. And I asked him, is that because you don't have any, like, Minnesota doesn't have faith in the receivers? And he's like, no, they're pretty good too there. And so it sounds like Minnesota is a juggernaut, basically, is what I'm saying. But I've got them 8, Tom. Who do you have? Or if you want to talk about Minnesota a little bit, just do what you need to do.
All right. Well, I will tell you that Minnesota is not number 8 on my list.
Ooh.
So we can have that Minnesota conversation real quick, and then I can talk about number 8 on my list. All the stuff you laid out there. If this Minnesota game is on October 2nd instead of September 2nd, it's probably 7 to me. First game on the road, night game, Thursday night, like, and new starting quarterback. You got some questions, just, a whole bunch of changes on the defense. What's the defensive backfield going to look like? I mean, there's just enough questions, and Minnesota's like just good enough that, I don't think Ohio State loses, but I think this is a competitive game into the second half, potentially into the fourth quarter. There's enough danger here and there's enough uncertainty here, and there's enough. How much is Ohio State really going to cut it loose? Like, it's Ohio State may play it a little close to the vest because it's, first game. How is CJ Stroud going to respond with under the lights with the live defense coming at him for the first time in 9 months? There's enough questions here that I think that is a little bit more challenging than the other one. And, let's transition to my number 8 game, which I'm not sure whether which would be more mind-blowing to a time traveler from the late 1990s. You saying earlier that Nebraska really struggles to run the ball with their running backs, like that, or Michigan, like at Michigan, that's just not really a game Ohio State has to worry about anymore. Like, it's just, the focus is never an issue. The talent gap is significant. You're at the point of the year where the grind of the season has worn down Michigan's depth, and Ohio State has far greater depth than Michigan has. You're at the point of the season where, CJ Stroud is probably, future Big Ten, offensive player of the year, CJ Stroud, and not first game starter CJ Stroud. You've got the depth on the offensive line. You've got the depth at running back, where it's like, well, if a guy gets hurt, they have another guy. You have a wide receiver get hurt, you got another guy. Like, there's just the margin for error at Ohio State. When they're playing at Michigan, it's just, focus is never an issue. They have countdown clocks going to Michigan right now in that building. Like, and again, I think Ohio State might be a little ticked off about last year's game. And, there may have been point total goals for last year's game that they are aspiring to hit again this year, since they didn't get a chance to try to hit them last year. It just, I can work together a scenario in my head where Ohio State, comes out, CJ Stroud has a rough game, throws a couple early picks, and that Minnesota game at least goes right down to the wire. Maybe Ohio State loses, maybe Ohio State, escapes with a 27-24 win, whatever. But I cannot draw up a scenario in my head where Ohio State goes up to Ann Arbor and just is flat, and Michigan comes out guns blazing and just, and takes advantage, and Ohio State is shell shocked and can't respond. Like, I don't see it. So I think the Minnesota game is more dangerous than the Michigan game. Now go back and tell your 1999 self that, that's the Michigan game. Like, it's like I don't know, we're arguing about whether it's the fourth or fifth most dangerous game for Ohio State on the road at Michigan. I'm like, yeah, sure. Go ahead and explain that to yourself right after you tell yourself how Nebraska's running backs aren't very good.
Yes. But Tom, Michigan can come out with the guns blazing, and Ohio State can too. And that can go 4 quarters.
I mean, the clock will run for 60 minutes. Yes. I mean, how long has it been since Michigan took Ohio State into the fourth quarter of a game? 2017. And who was the quarterback for Ohio State in that game? And what has happened to the quarterback play at Ohio State since that point?
Tom,
and what
stop
has happened?
Questions.
Yeah. Okay. So good. So I'm right. That's good. So go ahead and you can share your Michigan thing now, because I'm certain Michigan must be the next one for you.
Next one for me is Oregon.
It is not.
Is
it really?
Number 9, Oregon.
Wow.
And because it's a home game for Ohio State, it's a Pac-12 defense, which I don't really have much respect for. Although, maybe like the more northerly you go, maybe the defenses get better, because Washington has had a good defense here and there over the years. But yeah, go ahead.
Ohio State, very fortunate. Washington State not coming to town. Is that what I'm hearing?
I didn't. Washington State is too far east. But
it only applies to schools on the coast. Sorry.
Yes, exactly. No, I've got Oregon here. We've talked in the past about where we think probably the score against Oregon is more lopsided than the score against Minnesota, because Ohio State will just want to get out of town against Minnesota. But I also think they'll be in control of that game. This one against Oregon, they may need to swing a little bit more wildly, and not more wildly, but just take some more shots than they will, because they know there's a better chance. They know there's, Oregon's not somebody to take lightly. And so you're going to take more shots. You're going to treat them more seriously. You're going to try to score more points. And then the defense will the Ohio State defense will hold them back. And so that's why I think the Oregon game is a more lopsided score than the Minnesota game, but I think the Oregon game is more difficult. I think Oregon just has more talent. They've got this is a big game for the program itself. It's a big game for the conference. There's a lot riding on this. I think is Anthony Brown been named the starting quarterback now at Oregon. We'll see. They need this. Ohio State, they could use it. It would not be great for the Buckeyes if they lose this, but I think they could. Especially we keep talking about the 2014 comparisons where Ohio State goes on the road to start the season, then they come back and they play a non-conference Power 5 team, and they're starting a redshirt freshman quarterback. The parallels are there. National championship, all of that, But I've got Oregon number 9, Tom. Who do you have number 9? Or if you want to talk about Oregon, go ahead.
Well, I had Minnesota number 9. I mean, all the reasons we just talked about. I have Oregon. We got a couple spaces before I get to Oregon. And, this is Oregon's defense is a little bit like Oklahoma's defense this year, where I think people are going to get swayed by they're a Pac-12 team, so they don't play any defense. Well, they're Oklahoma, they don't play any defense. Like the talent that Lincoln Riley is accumulating on the defensive line in Norman, the talent that Mario Cristobal is accumulating in Oregon or in Eugene is leaps and bounds better than what they have had over the last few years. They've got, everyone knows Kayvon Thibodeau, but they just recruited Justin Flew, who's a 5-star linebacker out of California. You're getting the pieces there. They have a lot of guys back from last year's defense. They're much more physical than the Oregon teams that you watched Ohio State just beat into submission in the Rose Bowl or in the national championship game. Like Ohio State, you should just be able to pound Oregon into the ground. I don't think they're going to be able to do that this year. Oregon's not super, super, super explosive on offense. Like this is a less offensively explosive and much more competent defensive team than you're typically used to thinking of for an Oregon team. So we'll get to them in a couple spots, but yeah, I think that's, I don't think focus is going to be an issue for Ohio State on that one. So I don't think that's, I don't think that I'm necessarily thinking Ohio State's going to lose that game, but Oregon has the talent level, especially early in the season, to be able to really challenge Ohio State. And, I mean, you're asking CJ Stroud to go on the road at night on a Thursday night for his first start. And then his second game is a big noon game, which is going to be, I mean, it's going to be a weird atmosphere because everyone's going to be super jacked up, but it's also a noon game. And that's, again, you're asking someone to do something that's like very different. He's never played in front of a full horseshoe before. There's going to be a lot of stuff that's kind of new and different. And I feel like an 8 o'clock kickoff, you know what that's going to be like. I don't know what to expect for that game. Like, it's going to be a loud, raucous crowd, but it's noon. So maybe, I don't know.
It's the first home game with a crowd in 2 years.
Yeah.
So,
yes. And you're also going to have, I mean, I saw this week that Ohio State's going to have a 9/11 sticker on their helmet. So there's probably going to be some kind of pre-game recognition of 9/11, which will like kind of suck the atmosphere out of the place for a little while. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff that's just kind of like, yeah, that's going to be a little weird. Like, it's just, we'll see. I don't know quite what to expect there, but yeah, Oregon. I mean, I'll do my next one. My next one's Penn State. Before I get to Oregon, I'm saying Penn State
at number 9, or
at Minnesota was number 9. Penn State's number 10.
All right.
So Penn State's number 10. Home game. That they're good. They're going to be a far better team than they were last year, but Ohio State feels like Ohio State has kind of had their number. They have changed offensive coordinators a couple times. Kirk Soraka is gone from last year. He was there for 1 year. They've changed offensive coordinators again. Ricky Ronnie was there 2 years ago. So it's now 3 different offensive coordinators in 3 years. Sean Clifford's still there. And he's fine. They have the Noah Cain's back. That's going to help, but it's just, it's fine, but they're not. That's a team that Ohio State will not have, will probably not be overlooking. And Ohio State has just, James Franklin has not been able to put together a team that matches up incredibly well with Ohio State. So I don't think that's going to be I don't think that's probably a loss for Ohio State. And there's a couple of games that I think are more dangerous to the Buckeyes than that one.
Yeah, I have Penn State number 10 as well. And for whatever reason, the games, they've been close against Ohio State. Even there's been no blowouts really of late. 35 or 38-25 last year. They were 28-17 the year before. Then the year before that, I think it was a 27-26. So Penn State stays in the picture. They've lost a lot on the defensive line, so we'll see what the recruiting has done there. They've got a decent back seven, like the potential linebacker. I like Joey Porter at corner. They've got some secondary guys there. Let's see what the running backs can do. I wonder if this is where Sean Clifford becomes Trace McSorley, or if he just stays Sean Clifford. And if he just stays Sean Clifford, then Penn State maybe is like number 8 on this list. They need to be a little bit more than that. He needs to be more than that. And, he's been around long enough at this point that he should be. And, we know they have talent on offense. John Dotson, we saw what he did last year. They probably have some tight ends as well. That's Penn State. That's what they do. So yes, they are also my number 10 team on this list.
And, one thing that's a little bit of a concern for them is Will Levis, who was their backup last year, who I think came into the game 2 years ago at Ohio State and led them down the field for a score at one point. He transferred to Kentucky. He's going to be the starter at Kentucky this year. So behind Sean Clifford, if Sean Clifford does not turn into Trace McSorley, there's no one else coming off that bench to be a real impact player this year. So, a year from now, they've got Drew Aller coming in, and he may just walk right in and start day one. That is a possibility because the quarterback talent just isn't really there. That's you don't want to be too reductionist and just go, well, their quarterback's not great, so therefore they're going to be bad. But it's like you're not probably keeping Ohio State to 24 points in that game. So how does a team led by Sean Clifford or whoever else would be playing quarterback behind Sean Clifford, like how does that team get to 35, 38 points on the road against Ohio State? And I don't really see it.
A couple of pick sixes.
That's not the way those typically go in the Penn State Ohio State series.
Yes, no, the Saquon Barkley kickoff return, that sort of thing. You got to find some free points. My number 11 team, Tom, the second most difficult game on the schedule at Michigan.
I thought you were going to say Indiana, and
No,
I
and
was going to flip my lid.
No.
Go on.
And maybe this is me growing up with it, with the rivalry. And I anytime you go to Michigan, you have to be wary. The biggest concern I think Ohio State has is that Ryan Day owned Don Brown. He owned him. Don Brown is now gone. And so this is not going to be your standard Michigan defense. Yes, talent and depth are concerns there, but it's not one of those things where it's like a heist movie. Ryan Day, he's the safe cracker. You're like, hey, just get me in the building. I know the safe. I can get through it because it's a Don Brown safe. I know how it works. And then you get into the area where the vault is, and they've changed the safe, and now it's like, oh, now I'm going to need more time. I'm going to need complete silence. I'm going to need this drill bit and that drill bit. And so then he has to figure it out. And so there's going to be some figuring. And so it won't just be some easy thing. Now he'll have all season to do this, to figure it out and get some schematics and get some plans on this exact type of safe. But there's going to be, some different things that Michigan's defense does that keeps Ohio State from just running free, probably. And then the Ohio State defense itself facing the Michigan offense, I think it'll be fine. But it's still it's at Michigan, Tom, and this is more of a statement about the rest of the Ohio State schedule. Because if the game was at Penn State, it would be higher. If the game was at Oregon, it would be higher. This to me is just it's a home road thing, and going to Ann Arbor with the new defensive coordinator, new plans. That's why they are my number 11 team, the second most difficult game on the Ohio State schedule.
Michigan has a new defensive coordinator. Did he bring a bunch of cornerbacks from the NFL? No? Okay. All right. Good. So that's why Michigan was 5 spots away for me, earlier for me. I'd like, sure. I mean, walk me through the scenario where Michigan runs over Ohio State. Michigan's wide receivers and quarterback are just throwing the ball all over Ohio State. Walk me through the scenario where Ohio State's offensive line is not able to. Michigan is looking at a probably 3-4 or 3-3-5s. I mean, it's going to be some kind of weird. Run me through the scenario where Ohio State's offensive line doesn't just mash them into the ground and run the ball through them all day. And run me through the scenario where Ohio State can't throw the ball through that defense. You mentioned earlier, you remember Michigan State's wide receiver, Ricky White, who had 742 catches for 1.3 million yards against Michigan, and then had like 1 catch for 10 yards the rest of the season. All those corners are back. Great news. A lot of returning starters in that defensive backfield. Great news. Who is that great news for? Well, we're almost out of time, so we've got to keep moving to the next. Like, walk me through the scenario where a bunch of those things don't go badly for Michigan, because I know. I go back to 2019, and we were in the car driving up to Ann Arbor, and you sort of there's enough of a history and it's enough of a rivalry. You end up talking yourself into like, well, crazy stuff can happen. And then it's like the game starts, and then Ohio State throws for 9,000 yards, and yes, it's a new defensive scheme, but now they're trying to fit personnel to a scheme that they weren't necessarily recruited to, which does not always go well, and. Will Johnson is not at corner for them yet. That is, they have not actually solved that problem. So I think that is a game that, if Ohio State where Ohio State gets in trouble when they have a huge talent advantage is when they overlook a team at Purdue, at Iowa. When Ohio State does not overlook a team, and Ohio State does not overlook Michigan, they don't typically have a problem. So
Is 38-24 not a possibility?
I mean, it's what, 38-24 who?
Oh, come on, Tom.
Well, I mean,
geez, come on.
Ohio State winning by 2 touchdowns. Like, I don't know that Ohio State winning by 2 touchdowns on the road is actually, makes them the 11th most dangerous team on the schedule.
I think it might.
I mean, Ohio State, I could see Ohio State beating Ohio State having 2 touchdown games against Minnesota, Penn State, Oregon. I mean, any of those. I don't know that even if it is a 2 touchdown win, I don't know that it necessarily gets you to 11th. But also, how confident are you that Michigan's holding Ohio State's offense at 38 points? Because my level of confidence there is about a 2 of 10.
Yeah, no, we're talking like I don't know, a -3 turnover,
Yeah, I mean that's
for,
you need some weird stuff to happen for that game to be close. And
that's what I'm thinking. Weird stuff.
Yeah, I mean, okay. maybe.
Plan for the weird, and if it doesn't happen, be happy.
Yeah, I mean, but if Ohio State's -3 against Penn State, if Ohio State's -3 against Oregon, if Ohio State's -3 at Minnesota, like any of those games are 7-point, 10-point games. I don't think that Michigan is any different from any of those teams, and might, because of the level of focus involved, I think that makes it less dangerous, even though it is on the road.
What about you? 11.
Well, 11. I hit Oregon, so we've already run through Oregon. So number 12, we agree on number 1. We agree on number 12 at Indiana. It's just, obviously this is Indiana's Super Bowl this year. Indiana still thinks they got jobbed last year because the Big Ten did not follow Robert's Rules of Order and award them a championship that they lost on the field. Like, I mean, okay. So, and Indiana was out of that game. And then it was like the Rutgers game. It was a more talented Rutgers, more talented opponent in the Rutgers game, where it was the game was over, and then Indiana came back and made it look real competitive and had the ball with a chance to tie the game or win the game with a 2-point conversion, but didn't do it. So that's a real interesting game to me, because obviously they're going to throw everything they've got into it. Last year also kind of felt like a little bit of a perfect storm for Indiana, where I don't know if everything's going to go right. I don't know if they're going to get the call on the Penix 2-point conversion last year. I mean, it took like a miracle for them to beat Penn State, because you needed Penn State to score the touchdown when they were not supposed to score the touchdown. And then you needed Indiana to go down the field. And then you needed the call on the, did he really score on the 2-point conversion? Like, well, I mean, it was a really inspiring, great effort. I don't know that he necessarily scored on the 2-point conversion, but the official said he did. So therefore he did. So, I don't know if everything goes right for Indiana this year to the degree that it did last year. I don't know that I think Indiana wins the division, but I think this is a game Indiana could win. I think Indiana could win that game. That game is after a bye week for Ohio State and the week before Penn State. That's a little dicey to me. That's anytime you're coming off a bye, like sometimes you're well rested and sometimes you're a little flat, and then you're going on the road. And this may be one where you kind of, Ohio State hears for 2 weeks that they're going to lose to Indiana, and therefore this game is much less dangerous than you think it is. And maybe that makes the Penn State game more dangerous, because then, you've been hearing for 2 weeks you can beat Indiana, you lose to Indiana, and then they clobber Indiana, and then that makes Penn State more dangerous the next week, because that was the 2017 thing where Ohio State played Penn State and had that dramatic comeback. And then that was the Super Bowl. Hooray. And then, at Iowa next week, what could possibly go wrong? Like, well, let me tell you what could possibly go wrong. Lots of stuff. So, but yeah, this to me, just on its face, take out the Ohio State's going to hear for 2 weeks that they might lose this game. On its face, that to me makes this the most dangerous game on the schedule. Is that, where are you on why this is where it is?
Yeah, it's a road game. It's arguably the second most talented team in the Big Ten, probably the best defense in the Big Ten. So anytime you're going against the best defense on the road, you've got to be wary. And now the good thing is, like you said, they're coming in off of a bye week. Indiana kind of is as well. They're coming in off of a bye week, and then they play Michigan State the week before they play Ohio State. So that's almost like 2 bye weeks when you think about it. But, at that point, Michael Penix should be fully back, and he'll work out his kinks from his injury last year. I just think that the Buckeyes know that should have been much uglier last year, because it was, and they will be being told for a while, like, they'll probably be shown clips of, Indiana almost beat you. And really, like, technically, yes. But that was a game that Ohio State, you saw the real Ohio State in that game, and Indiana thinks that was the real Indiana. And I don't know that was, I think you saw the difference in the teams in the first half, and Ohio State will want to show that same difference in this game. Now, they don't have Justin Fields leading the charge, so you'll have to get that leadership from everywhere else. But yeah, Yeah, I think this is the easy answer as the most difficult because it's crazy to think that maybe Penn State is more talented, but Indiana overall I think is the better team, and they showed that last year, and they've got just about everybody back this year.
That just feels like a week where we're going to walk into the indoor facility on Monday or Wednesday or whatever, and right now on the video board in the indoor it says beat and then has the Minnesota logo, and they but sometimes they'll have a team message, and after the Iowa game in 2017, I remember laser focus was the message for you have to be focused on just this one thing. You can't have your focus drift. You have to focus on just one thing. I just feel like finish the drill is going to be up there for the Indiana game, or something like that, or leave no doubt. Like that's going to be the focus that week of you had these guys dead, and then you let them back off the mat, and then you created all of these issues and all of these questions later in the year because you let them off the mat. If Ohio State beats Indiana 42-7 last year, that the argument for Indiana gets a lot more, you kind of had to squint to see it last year because it was like, well, I mean, they only lost by a touchdown on the road. It's like, well, yes, but they keep score. Like they keep score to determine who the better team is. And the score said that Ohio State won the game. And he's like, well, they practically won the game. Like you let them off the mat last year. You didn't finish the drill last year. You have to finish the drill this year. Like that feels like that's going to be the message. And then those are the weeks that, the week after that Iowa game last in 2017, Ohio State came out and beat Michigan State, like a decent Michigan State team, 48-3. Like when Ohio State really has that focus, really has that, like finish the drill, eye of the tiger thing going for them. That's when people get the crap kicked clean out of their bodies. And like, there's a possibility. I mean, that game on its face is dangerous. There's a possibility Ohio State goes to Indiana and just beats the soul out of their body. Just if they're good for one of those a year, that might be the one where you see that.
Yeah, it was similar to the 2015 Michigan game coming off of the Michigan State loss, and they went to Michigan and just smacked up the Wolverines. And I can definitely see that as well for this game. And it's that level of focus that will be required, will be there, but still. That's why it's the most difficult. But again, they're going to be favored by double digits against everybody. So it's hard to. That's why ranking these isn't all that simple, because they're all considerable underdogs, and for many different reasons. And any of these games could go ugly for the opponent.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, the tiers here are Indiana, Oregon, Penn State, and you can put them in whatever order you want to, and then Minnesota, Michigan, maybe Nebraska in that next tier where it's like, well, these are road games. So you want to move Rutgers up to that level. Okay. You want to move Nebraska down to the next level. That's fine. You get Tulsa, Maryland, Purdue, Michigan State. They're all like, yeah, I mean, if Ohio State really plays badly, that could be a game into the third quarter. And then there's Akron. But it's just, I mean, there's a lot of like, yeah. Mm-hmm. And, it's very easy to look at that and go, well, Ohio State's favored by 10 points. Their schedule must not be that good. Want to guess how many games Alabama's going to be favored by 10 points in this year? Probably just about all of them. So, I mean, sometimes teams are just better than a lot of the other teams they play. You want to guess how many games Oklahoma's going to be favored by more than 10 points in this year? Probably just about all of them. So that's, and if Clemson wasn't playing Georgia, they probably would be too. And if Georgia wasn't playing Clemson, they probably would be too. It's just, there's a little bit of a stratification in the sport right now. And that's probably not a great thing for college football. But if you're an Ohio State fan, you're probably just fine with it.
You think Oklahoma's going to be favored by more than 10 hosting Nebraska?
I think Oklahoma's going to be favored by, well, I'll tell you what, you tell me what Oklahoma's favored by hosting Nebraska, and I will tell you how big of a bet I'm going to put on Oklahoma in that game.
23.5.
Yeah, I mean that seems like
that line is probably out. I don't know.
All the stuff behind the scenes on that one is like, Scott Frost trying to get out of that game. Like that's not a good sign that's not good for anyone. That's not.
Sometimes it works though. I mean, we may have seen that last year.
Yeah. Name one time we saw that last year.
We've run out of time this week, Tom. Today. Anything else before we get out of here?
Nope. We will have a fantastic week coming up. Really excited. We are getting on an airplane, going to Minneapolis. We're going to have a fun have a movie premiere on Monday night. We've got a trip to Minnesota coming up. Football game on Thursday with actual people in stands. Like, I can't wait. This is going to be awesome.
It is going to be awesome. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be here before we know it. Even especially for us. I know all of the fans are like, this is going to be the longest week ever or whatever. For us, it's like we have no time. We got no time.
If you think there's too much time before college football season starts, I encourage you to become a member of the college football media. Doesn't pay great, but man, the time flies before games.
It sure does. So thank you all for watching and listening. A reminder to check out BuckeyeScoop.com and become a member if you are not yet a member. Also, check out YouTube.com/BuckeyeScoop for all of our video releases and video drops and interviews and highlights and stuff like that. So thank you all, and we will talk to you later.